Let's start on camera one. There you go.
All right.
You are live. Okay, this is you.
Okay.
You're gonna see every camera is going to be on you. So we're recording on 3 different cameras. As far as I can tell, the audio is good on your mic right now. So
Okay.
what we want to do at this point is start talking about the Jazz Festival, and like the outline that I sent you
Yeah.
said, you want to start with a basic history.
Yeah.
Along with a bio of Thin Man Watts.
Yeah.
Your part, how you play a part in the Jazz Festival.
Mm-hmm.
Former, the Jazz Festival itself, where you're playing, all that kind of stuff. And some past players,
Mm-hmm.
performers that were in the Jazz Festival.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And after do that, talk about your fundraising,
Yeah.
talk about your sponsors, and talk a little bit about the integral part of
The organization.
the organization
Yeah.
themselves. And then after that, I go ahead and recap everything.
Okay.
And just sort of do a brief recap, and perhaps if you want to throw in a shout out to
Mm-hmm.
special sponsors or financiers, you can do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to take all that video, throw some B-roll on it, and do like a little sponsored,
Yeah.
Sponsored promo for the
Yeah.
Jazz Fest, and throw in
Okay.
the date and time that you're planning on doing
Wow.
this year's Jazz Fest.
As always, you're really very generous with your time and talent, Doug. Thanks, man. I mean, I didn't ask you to help with the Jazz Fest, and this is one of those things, right? It's going to be helping the Jazz Fest.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's about the Jazz Fest. This
Yeah.
is helping me. I'm posting. You've seen those videos that I'm posting. I've got
Yeah.
one of Charlie Cracker. I'm still editing. I
Yeah.
can talk forever.
Yeah.
So I'm still working on his. I'm also planning on a couple of other people coming in, and I thought maybe since I'm doing it anyway,
Yeah.
I would have you come in and talk about the Jazz Fest.
Yeah.
Which would be an addition to my project and something
Okay.
that you could post online for the Jazz Fest.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's where we're going. So here's what you need to do. Just go ahead and relax. Make sure that you've got all your information.
Mm-hmm.
If your phone is plugged in right now.
Yeah.
So if you want to, I don't know if you need to
Refer to it.
access your phone.
We'll see. I probably got it all in my head.
All right. Okay. So if
I had a folder. I had a folder when I left the house. I thought I was going to bring, but I left it. There would have been maybe props or reference, but I think I'm
we'll
pretty
just
good.
go through it, and
Yeah.
you can just go through the information, and we'll see how it goes. Okay.
All right.
So right now, let's just begin with a brief history. I'm not going to talk.
Okay.
You're gonna basically stream your do some thought streaming and just
Right.
go ahead through the whole thing. If you lose your place, perhaps I'll give you a lead.
Yeah.
Other
Thanks.
than
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
just say
Yeah.
what you need to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. We're ready to go.
All right. In 2004, I don't remember the month. It was earlier in the year. I think it was April, May. The DeLand-based African American Museum for the Arts decided to have an event celebrating the dedication and the naming of the newly built amphitheater on their campus, on the 300 block of South Clara in DeLand, in the name of Noble Thin Man Watts.
Okay, time out real quick. Bring the uhs down a little bit.
Oh, it's
You're
okay.
saying quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
I
Don't
want
even.
you to go ahead and
Yeah.
try and cut that out as best you can.
Thanks.
I'm only going to tell you once.
Thanks.
Whatever you do now, you're
Okay. Cool.
on your own. Okay.
Cool. All right.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. So I heard about this event with Noble being present. He showed up. He was ill, but he was there. I think they brought him in on a gurney. So he had been at the nursing home nearby, and the staff there thought, well, this is something important enough to bring him. And of course, I'm sure he wanted to be there. They're naming the amphitheater after him. And so it was the initial version of the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest. And I think it was called just that too, Thin Man Wants Jazz Fest. It was organized by the staff at the African American Museum, along with some others that supported it. It really did a good job bringing community together. When I look back at that program, I'm impressed with the support they got. A lot of the people with interest in business in the community, politicians, people from all walks of life, they really did a good job back then getting that thing going. And of course, it was, like I said, a newly built facility, a really nice little amphitheater. It's nothing fancy, but it's really very nice outdoor amphitheater with some it's got sound built in, lights. Sound and lights were built into the amphitheater, so they got this thing together. Like I said, early in 2004, I showed up. I bought my saxophone and joined, I think, Mark Hodgson and his Blues All Stars. I wish I could remember some of the guys that were on the stage that day. I'm sure it was a pretty good jam. And Noble was there. Like I said, it was pretty inspiring, especially now thinking back on it. At the time, I just thought it was another day, sort of. It was a great day to be out playing music. The weather was good, and it was successful. So then I don't really know what happened. I wasn't really at all directly involved in organizing that event. I just got an invitation and showed up and played some music, kind of checked the scene out. And after that, I don't think they planned another one as an annual event. Mary Allen was involved a great deal. She's the current director of the museum. She was involved a great deal in planning and pulling that one off. And soon after, though, whether it was the following year, they may have had an event in 2005, but then certainly picking up about 2006, Mark Hodgson, well-known bluesman out of Daytona Beach area, he picked up the mantle, the Jazz Fest, and started an event at Daytona Beach Community College. That's what it was called then. Daytona Beach Community College had a very nice venue that he used for this. I think he called it the annual. I don't remember what he called it. We'd have to refer back, but he did. He invited a lot of great musicians from local, mostly. I never did attend that event at Daytona Beach Community College. I heard good things about it. Of course, Mark Hodgson is a quality entertainer himself, and he would surround himself and bring in a lot of really good guys. Perhaps some, I think, of the people that were involved in King Snake, because Mark played quite a bit with Noble, probably as much or more than any other single local musician in those days. Mark Hodgson played with Noble quite a lot. So those associations that I'm sure he grew over those years in the 90s, primarily in the 1990s, is what I'm thinking he must relied on to bring a lot of the talent in for that period of time. For what I put it this way, that's sort of what morphed. It wasn't planned. I think it was more of an organic situation that took place, where Mark saw an opportunity to do something on behalf of Noble Watts, and he did. So one of the main features of that event was the beginning of the Watts Greenlee Scholarship Fund. And Doug Peterson, administrator at Daytona Beach Community College at that time, was involved in helping Mark get that set up. So that continues to this day, the Watts Greenlee Scholarship Fund. And the current version of the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest has a commitment to contribute to that annually, and we have maintained that commitment. We continue to put money into the Watts Greenlee Scholarship Fund. So that was actually when I went to Mark having let me back up here a minute. I decided it was a good idea to maybe try to get something going in DeLand again after he had done this several years at Daytona Beach Community College. It seemed only right to revive the venues in DeLand as part of the Jazz Fest. I didn't really think about it being this instead of that. That is pretty much how it turned out. And I never really had that discussion with Mark. Maybe I should someday, even yet. We should maybe think about doing something in more than one venue, more than one town, involving remembering and celebrating Watts and his music. And then I failed to mention the Greenlee in the Watts Greenlee Scholarship Fund. That's not something to overlook. See, Bob Greenlee was instrumental in bringing Noble back in to the community in Central Florida. Noble had been out of town, more or less. I mean, he would come back to visit, but he was out primarily in North America, touring, making his way as a professional musician for since the 1950s, perhaps even into I think the late 40s. So Noble returned from New York, where he had been living in the late 80s, to the West Fallujah DeLand area. And so there were several years went by after he returned, but he was gigging. He was trying to get reestablished in playing. He didn't want to quit playing. I mean, he had a good enough career that he could have been satisfied with it and said, okay, I'm just going to take it easy now. But musician wants to play, and Noble is no exception. He got out and started playing in the clubs in DeLand and beyond. Of course, then to tie this thread back to the story I was telling, along the way, the friendship or the connection was made with Bob Greenlee. Noble Watts and Bob Greenlee got together, and Greenlee owned and operated a studio in Sanford, Florida called King Snake Records. I don't know the details on the history of that studio, but it was pretty remarkable for a small, sort of out-of-the-way place that didn't really have any kind of history of its own. It was just Bob Greenlee saying, I'm going to get this going. He initiated it, and he brought in some amazing talent. King Snake Studios. And Noble's landmark or most notable record at King Snake was called The Return of the Thin Man. That was in the 90s, and he recorded that at King Snake Studios with Bob Greenlee and this stable of real fine blues musicians. I would hate to say blues musicians. They're all just good musicians that they happen to be playing blues. But he made pretty good waves in the blues and in the community nationally, really with The Return of the Thin Man. So that explains a little about the Greenlee in the Watts Greenlee Scholarship Fund. So as I mentioned earlier, the attendance of Noble at the inaugural version of the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest at the African American Museum, the new amphitheater they were dedicating in 2004. That was soon after that he passed away, and Bob Greenlee coincidentally passed away in 2004 also. So both of these in terms of local music scene, they were pretty big. I mean, they were among the guys in Central Florida, Daytona, Orlando, and beyond. That studio, the activity that was going on there, the return of the Thin Man, as I mentioned, and so on, and the energy and the talent that was happening. It was a pretty good scene back then, and so this is something really worth, memorializing, something worth remembering. And Mark Hodgson had the foresight to put that together. So then in 2010, I thought it would, as I mentioned, be a good idea to revive some venues in DeLand as part of this, or perhaps the whole festival. And so I went to the African American Museum board members individually and collectively. We met a couple of times, and the vision for this, from my perspective, and the folks who were advising me, I was asking a lot of my friends. I had never put together or been involved in any production of this nature, not on this scale anyway. And the way the vision evolved is that this would be something to bring the community together, and really along racial lines. So, basically you have still in most any community neighborhoods that are primarily Black neighborhoods, African American neighborhoods, and then you have the more affluent or white neighborhoods, or where people of color are living, going to church, doing their business, very much separately. Although it's been decades since the days of segregation, it's still something that you see. For example, Main Street DeLand, which is a great organization that promotes vibrant business communities in downtown DeLand. They do great events where they offer just fun things to do, tropical nights, or something about Halloween. Typically, there's a big draw for people to come downtown, have fun, and take a look at the shops and so on. But when I see what the makeup of the audience of these events are, it was mostly not people of color. So a lot of the motivation for me to do this from the beginning was to bring the community together, to get people involved in music. Sure seems like a good recipe for doing that. So Thin Man Wants Jazz Fest is what we did in 2011, organizing the original, or the initial return of it to DeLand. We did a good job bringing some talent in that year. We had headlining act Sam Rivers and the Rivby Orchestra. That was remarkable from my point of view as a person, as a musician, especially because I had been following Sam Rivers. I had learned about his presence in Orlando a couple or 3 years prior to that. I guess maybe it was in 2006 or 7 I first started following Sam and his band and his music and out of the Orlando area. Of course, Sam was really remarkable. He had quite a bio, as far as his history. The career he had built was well known among folks who follow jazz very closely at all. Sam Rivers is not probably a household name, but among those that follow jazz, he is. He had been involved with Dizzy Gillespie, And when he moved to Orlando, he started up a new facet in his career. He started writing new music for big band, and there was plenty of talent. He was able to gather musicians who were pros playing in the theme parks, and then later he started gathering a lot of folks that were involved in teaching music in the schools. University of Central Florida, for example, is where he drew a lot of talent from to supply the talent for the Rivby Orchestra. So, and then the Athens Theater had been dormant for many years. It hadn't had any live shows for decades. Any live shows with any consistency, anyway. I think there may have been a few one-off type things that were productions here and there over the years. But when they refurbished that old theater and restored it to really a fine place for music, the acoustics are wonderful in there. The interior was beautiful. I mean, and then when I went to hear some shows in there soon after it opened in the 2000s, I was so impressed with that theater. I thought, well, this is something. When the opportunity came in the first in the first festival after the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest returned to DeLand, it came together. The Sam Rivers and the Rivby Orchestra opened or headlined the 2011 Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest. So in the Athens Theater, I wish we had recorded some of that. We have some record of it, and that was Sam's last show before he passed away. So he passed away in, I believe, December of 2011. From there, I got, and there's one thing I neglected as we've been discussing this here, is that the two organizations that really come together to produce this event are the African American Museum of the Arts and Main Street DeLand Association, which I referred to. Okay.
Quick, stop.
Yeah. I'm not going very linear. I'm kind of skipping around.
Yeah, it's all right. You can fix that in edit. Give me just 1 second. I gotta reset the cameras real quick.
Okay, good. I need a break anyway.
Yeah, get something to drink.
Yeah. It's good though. I mean, we got stuff we can use, I hope.
Oh yeah. We got a lot of stuff we need.
Yeah, I'm
does.
mhm.
So
Let's see, along the lines of the bullet points or the topics you outlined, have I missed something? Is there something I need to go back and get?
as far as the information is concerned, you seem to be doing okay. You do stumble a little bit,
Yeah, I know.
saying a lot.
I'm still doing that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you need to kind of.
Trying to be conscious of that. I hope I've reduced it a little bit.
Well, you have. It's okay. I'm not going to use the whole thing.
Right.
I'm going to be cutting quite a bit of it and using some B-roll for several things that you've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And one there, back a little bit.
It's almost like seems like a mirror image the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So what I would like to do now, as far as the cameras are concerned, I'm going to ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
And as I ask you these questions, let's just say I ask you, how long have you been involved with the Jazz Fest? You say, I've been involved with the Jazz Fest
Yeah.
for such and such amount of time.
Oh, okay.
Tell me about the Main Street DeLand, down, what is it?
Main Street DeLand. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about Main Street DeLand. And you answer with Main Street DeLand is.
Keep the subject
Yeah.
in what I say.
Right.
So it can be independent of what you're, right.
Right. So first of all, tell me how long you've been involved with the Jazz Fest.
Okay. I have been involved with managing and producing the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest for 10 years. I started in 2011 managing and producing and promoting as a partner with the Main Street DeLand Association and the African American Museum of the Arts since 2011. So 10 years now, with the exception of 2020, the event has been held as an annual music festival. So,
who have been the major contributors to the Jazz Festival?
Major contributors to the Jazz Fest include from the very beginning a company that has now changed names. It's was brought or what have you, I think, but the media company Bright House Networks. They were very supportive early on, and another company that probably gave the biggest single contribution over the years was TD Bank. We have to really pursue TD Bank, see if we can get them back on board. As yet, we have failed to do that. Probably maybe more on our part than theirs. We got to really press and ask them to. Oh, that was my water. I'll go back and say it again. Yeah, TD Bank may be a good prospective partner for the future. We just need to put the package together and convince them it's a good deal. Ooh, my phone.
You need to get it?
No.
Is it ringing?
Yeah. I'm sure it's all right. I'll check in a minute. Some of the other valuable contributors to the Jazz Fest over the year include real well-known patron of the arts in the DeLand area, Judy Thompson. I think she has been very steadfast in making a significant contribution each year that we've had the festival. Many others, too numerous to name, really have made significant contributions. I could name a few off the top of my head, but I'm sure to forget somebody. So those 3 or 4, though, are very important ones that I think are only fair to mention.
So during the year after the previous Jazz Festival, you pretty much hit the road and try and find new sponsors, existing sponsors, and collect donations and contributions for the next Jazz Festival coming up. And so your
Yeah.
process basically is a year-long process trying to
Mhm.
trying to acquire monies and funds for the performers and the venues so they can play.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, tell me about that. What your process is in trying to raise funds for the jazz
Okay.
festival.
Yeah. With the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest being an annual event, it really doesn't stop. Each year uh, at the end of the event that we hold in October, that's when we have done it each of the past 10 years at least. We start looking again for support for the coming year. A lot of it is, preparing, making sure that our website has the right information on it, updating it, um, making sure that we have our concept of what we're doing made clear to those that we're looking to partner with. So yeah, it really begins anew each year when we look forward to the next October event. So many of the sponsors are perennial in that they really look forward to support for the next event, and some of them I have to remind, or we also are really aware of trying to bring in new interest into the event, and so it's kind of like recruiting. We need to go out and let folks know. It's kind of like recruiting, promoting, and marketing, all of those things where we need to get out in the community where there's a good interest in maybe the companies promoting their products. The Jazz Fest has a good following. I mean, the fans are generally older. I'd say the demographic is older. And we haven't studied this real closely or scientifically, but a typical Jazz Fest fan is going to be 50 years old, probably median. I mean, there's many younger ones and there's many older ones, but relatively speaking, that's, I think, an older range as far as the age group. And that's something that the sponsors that are in business to try to market their products and their brand are interested in knowing. The folks in that older range of age are probably generally more have more disposable income. So if there's and one thing that I've been trying to find without success so far, but persistence will pay. I'm going to keep knocking on these doors and asking. But I think a car dealership would really benefit from associating its brand with the Jazz Fest. After all, like I was just describing, I think there's probably a lot of folks who are looking at the Jazz Fest website, attending the Jazz Fest event, interested in the products and the music that come through the Jazz Fest or other similar type events or music. They're going to be the type of people that are going to be buying cars. I mean, it's just kind of like any business. You want to identify who your audience is and try to market to them.
Okay, so tell me about your previous artists, some of your bigger acts. Tell me about
Okay.
The guys who have been present in the last few years, and possibly some of your more constant acts, continuous people who show up every year or
Yeah. Okay.
every year.
Some of the let me start that again. Some of the best acts that we've had over the years are local Central Florida-based musicians and bands. Some of them have come from outside of the area, but the ones that come to mind that I think are most notable among them are Ira Sullivan. Ira headlined the show in recent years once. He joined on the stage with the Daytona State College Jazz Ensemble. At one point, prior to the Jazz Ensemble coming on, you know, an 18, 20-piece big band that studies involves students at Daytona Community College, or Daytona State College as it's called now. Then prior to the big band coming on, Ira Sullivan combined with Abe Allam, who's the director of the Daytona State Jazz Ensemble, along with a group of really remarkable, maybe some of the best music I've heard over the years at the festival. This quartet that Abe put together to collaborate with Ira Sullivan. Ira Sullivan is one of those guys. I mean, he's just huge in terms of people who follow jazz closely in the United States. So it was quite a privilege to have him at that show. Another really noteworthy artist that I was so glad to have at the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest was jazz guitarist Larry Coryell. Coryell, I mean, when you look at his bio, you realize that there's hardly anyone better at what he did during the time he played. Some of the collaborations that he was involved with involve John McLaughlin, Paco de la Sierra, I think I got that right. Some of the most outstanding talent in the world. So, you know, when we had Larry Coryell, he brought a trio, and he held the audience spellbound at the African American Museum Dr. Noble Thin Man Watts Amphitheater. That was a show I'll never forget. Yeah, I think he had Marty Morell on the drums, who is renowned. Marty, of course, I think is most recognized by many jazz fans as the drummer for Bill Evans. And then on the bass, he had a faculty member from UCF whose name is escaping me right now. But that was a show we will never forget. Another of the most prominent players to headline the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest was a young man with a really good future before him. I remember his name.
Sax player?
No, the steel pan drummer. Oh man.
Drop it.
Yeah.
Just drop it.
So okay. Yeah. Another. Let me think. Most recent years.
Caesar Frazier.
Oh yeah. Thanks. Yeah. How? Yeah. And we were lucky, really fortunate to be able to get this nationally renowned artist, known for his mastery of the B3 organ. We had Caesar Frazier headline 1 year recently. Caesar has got connections locally. In fact, I think he grew up where many of his...
He lives in Orange City right now.
Yeah. Oh, he lives in... So yeah, he's got family here. He either was born and grew up here and currently lives here, as I understand. So Caesar Frazier although he is a local artist, he's high level artist. So it was not to be taken for granted that we could really get him in and get the B3 organ on stage and do the production right so that we could feature his artistry. Yeah, Caesar was, again, an unforgettable show. That Hammond B3, watching him work those pedals, and the band that he had with him, it blew everybody away. I think that's again, it's hard to say what the best show was. They're all so good. There's just not a comparison. I don't think it's fair to say, one of the headliners is better than the other. They're just different, and so many of them I'd like to have back. Jonathan Scales, the young steel pan drummer, he has quite a future, and that would be one that I will be calling to see if he can find time on his schedule, and if we can find an agreement to get him back. He's full of energy. Jonathan Scales had the audience just so active. It was an interactive show when Jonathan played the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest. He had a lot of the audience come on the stage and watch close the musicians that were playing. He would describe some of the beats that he would do, because Jonathan's music, much original music. He does cover other artists, but probably among those among the headline acts that we've had, he's probably one that writes as much or more original music as any of them. And a lot of his music has odd meters. It's going to be a tune that's in 9/8 time or something like that. And he would illustrate what this odd meter meant as far as counting it out and playing it, and then have the audience involved in actually counting it out as they played it. So he really had the audience going good. Jonathan Scales is one that, like I said, he's got a future as an international artist, I think. So hopefully we'll get him back one day.
Okay, so we covered some of the artists. Let's talk a little bit about the future of the Jazz Fest. Now, obviously, they didn't have it last year because of the pandemic. Maybe briefly go over how that's affected the Jazz Festival at this point. Have you lost any sponsors due to it?
Okay.
Have you been able to confidently say that you're going to be able to get the Jazz Festival going again because of the possible loss of sponsors, or even loss of interest because of the pandemic? Go over that briefly. Just talk a little bit about how the pandemic has affected the Jazz Festival, and talk about what your future plans are, and if you have any future acts in line, or if you're looking for somebody specific. Go ahead.
Okay. The pandemic did certainly affect the Jazz Fest. The Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest had to deal with it just like everyone else. So in 2020, we looked at the prospect of doing something that would be a virtual event. And there was a good plan that I think we could have pursued and managed, but as it turned out, we didn't have an event in 2020, virtual or real time. So this year, 2021, our committee, involving members from both producing organizations, the African American Museum and Main Street DeLand, got together recently, and we decided we're going to plan as if we're going forward with a live event, perhaps a hybrid event with some virtual aspects to it at the same time. But certainly we're going on the plan that we are going to hold the event similar to what we have in years past, as a live event at the venues that we have customarily done so this year in 2021 in October. Some of the talent, I've always thought I would like to get a Latin jazz type artist to headline, and we've made contact with a couple over the years. I plan to pursue contacting Nestor Torres out of Miami. I think he's still based out of South Florida. He has done numerous shows in the Central Florida area, so I know he's familiar with what the audiences of Central Florida like, and that would be largely a popular style. I mean, I believe Nestor is Puerto Rican, and we have a large Puerto Rican community here, and but everybody loves that style, whatever your ethnicity or your heritage. I think. I mean, I can't help but listening and just enjoying when you hear that beat, that Latin jazz style. So another prospect that I've always thought would be really a good feather in our cap, I guess, if you will, that if we could get somebody like Chucho Valdez, Afro-Cuban piano player. He did perform in DeLand at the Athens Theater when year maybe 2007 thereabouts. I saw that show, and he was awesome. And I'd like to make contact with Chucho and see if he may be able to meet us on terms and time and get him back, or say get him back, get him here. It'd be the first time for him if he were to appear for us. They're good, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So in recap, let's just talk about quickly go over what we've already gone over as basic and a recap of all of the information. The Jazz Fest has started at Daytona State College or Daytona Beach Community College.
Yeah, right.
With Mark Hodgson, and was it Mark Hodgson and Bob Greenlee who got it started up at DBCC?
No, it was Hodgson and Daniels, really. If I got that name right, Doug Daniels, I think I mentioned his name.
Okay, so
it's bad if I mention names and they're wrong.
yeah.
It's better to say, that guy.
Generally, I ask my subjects to leave names out of it.
Right.
But since this is such an integral thing with the land and we're trying to promote it, I think that the names need to stay in. As long as you're not slandering them or making them look foolish or something like that, I think it'll be all right.
Right. Yeah. I think
so. I don't.
Sort of recap them.
Yeah. You said Doug Peters the last time.
Oh yeah, I got that name right. Yeah, Doug Peterson. Yeah.
That's what you said before.
Yeah, right? That's correct. I believe we should probably vet that or make sure I didn't get it wrong. Right?
You did say Doug Peterson
before
last time.
Yeah, that's.
So now you're saying Doug Daniels.
Yeah, I got it right the first time, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll check that.
Okay.
Anyway, again, go over it briefly.
Okay.
I tell them how long you've been working on the Jazz Fest,
okay.
And just basically say, we look forward to having many more years of
sort of encapsulate. Okay.
Right. Keep it compact.
Okay. So, looking back on the history of the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest, I have to recall that first year when at the African American Museum, the Dr. Noble Thin Man Watts Amphitheater, Noble himself showed up, and Mark Hodgson and his Blues All-Stars were there along with several other fabulous acts. And that was 2004, so that was the inaugural. That was the very first year that an event happened that we call and go back to in our history as the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest. And then a couple of years it went. Bluesman, local guitarist, harmonica player, and singer-songwriter Mark Hodgson continued the festival in a way where he had a gala, an annual event featuring him and his Blues All-Stars at Daytona State College. It was actually Daytona Beach Community College in those years. same institution, different name. But so after several years of success with that, I was inspired to see if we could bring this event in some way back to DeLand, where Noble was born and raised. Noble Watts calls DeLand his hometown. And so we got together a group involving the African American Museum of the Arts in DeLand, members from that group, along with Main Street DeLand Association, with the concept to bring the community together. So there was agreement that we would try this, and in 2011, we brought the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest back to venues in DeLand, and that was successful. I mean, it did bring the community together. A lot of people showed up. The music was great, and it continued from there year after year, getting better in many ways. We'd like to grow it. I feel like that's a kind of a difficult challenge that we have still to face, is to grow the event. As I mentioned, I think it's really improved. We've done a lot to make things better. We've learned how maybe to avoid mistakes and do better at what we're doing to suit the audience, to suit the performers, to suit the sponsors, and so on. And I got to say, the community has done a great job in support. Without the sponsors, the contributors, people who are doing in-kind contributions, a lot of folks volunteer for the event. It's something that a lot of people, I believe, mark on their calendar and aim not to miss. And I've got a friend who recently said to me, when is the Jazz Fest coming up? Of course, we didn't have it in 2020 because of the pandemic, but
You got 2 minutes.
my friend was looking at his calendar and he said, "Oh, October? Yeah, my wife and I have always been gone. We are out of town typically in October, and I'm so looking forward to being home this year where we can attend the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest." So it has become something that people look forward to, and I do too. I mean, I'm the first to tell you it's a lot of work. Being involved in producing and promoting and operating an event like this. It does have its ups and downs, and you do question your intentions occasionally, and you question the folks you're working with, and ask, can we do this better? Should we do it differently? Should we, how are we going to continue? How are we going to make it better? So we continue to look for those answers, and in 2021 we plan to have our show as we have in years past, and a lot of people are hungry for it. I think after 2020 and the pandemic, the absence of live music and the energy and the community that brings, that's something that I'm looking forward to, and we'll have something. Check our website for updates. We're going to be publishing something soon.
What's the website?
Our website is wattsjazzfest.com. So we'll update that. That's one of the things we need to update. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
So
pretty good.
real quick, before we close,
Yeah.
we've only got like a minute left.
Okay.
Give me your intro. Hi, my name is Jeff Shepard.
Okay.
I'm manager or
Okay.
owner or operator, whatever, of the
Yeah.
Jazz Fest. And I'm here to talk to you about the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest, something like that. Okay?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jeff Shepard, and for 10 years I've been involved as a producer, promoter, and manager of the Thin Man Watts Jazz Fest, DeLand, Florida. We have done this in DeLand as a revitalized event having been started years earlier and really not remaining as a constant annual event. In 2011, we revived it into land, and we hope to really we hope to bring a lot more music for the people of DeLand, West Volusia, and Central Florida for years to come.
Okay, so I'm going to cut most of that out.
Right.
All you really needed to say was, "Hi, my name is Jeff Shepherd."
Oh, okay.
Running the chest
Okay. All right. Okay.
for 10 years. We're pretty much done.
Okay. Cool.
Unless you have some other things that you'd like to say,
All right.
I'm going to shut down the cameras.
Let me see.
So the thing is, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Is that when we do interviews together in the future, what I would like you to do is focus on a point. Try not to divert too much.
Right. Yeah.
And
I get a little bit like.
yeah, everybody does it when they're in conversation. When you're in an interview, it's a little bit different because you have to stay focused on your point and try not to divert too much. That lengthens the amount of information.
Right.
It lengthens the interview itself. And really, if somebody's watching you on YouTube or whatever, however they're watching you, they really want to get the point.
Right.
I mean, telling interesting stories and things like that is okay, but try not to divert too much. And as far as your speech is concerned, you got to work on getting those ums out of it. That sort of chops up your speech a little bit. It makes it seem disjointed.
Right. And distraction a little.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I have plenty to work with, and I'm going to throw in some B-roll and some extra video.
See, what you end up edited of this will probably be 10 minutes or less.
Yes.
Yeah.
10 minutes or less. I mean, it's going to be very brief and to the point.
Right.
It's not going to be 2 hours.
So therefore, you have enough. Yeah. Right. Okay.
So the idea is basically to get a relatively brief promotion of the Jazz Fest out, show some B-roll, get some, fire up some interest, get your website hit, and do those kinds of things. So it's gonna take some time for me to throw this all together, but
yeah, you're still working on some other stuff, probably, huh?
I've got Tim's that I've got to punch out. I'm almost done with his. His was a little bit difficult.
Oh, Tim's his name?
Yeah.
Charlie Cracker?
Charlie
yeah,
Cracker.
Tim.
His name is Tim. I've known him forever. I mean, I've known him ever since I moved to Volusia County. When we started doing the jam sessions up at the Blind Pig and the Artisan and all those places. And, Da Vinci's, Pat's place.
Yeah.
So as far as the videos are concerned, aside from this one, my goal really is to get like people who have interesting stories, personal stories that they can share, and something that will motivate and inspire people, or just simply entertain people. You can come in, you can tell a funny story, a tragic story, an enlightening story, whatever. As long as there's some human interest involved, and you've got a point to where you're going, and there's an outcome. If you can say, well, this is what I've learned from my experience. This is how I live my life afterward. Generally, it doesn't necessarily have to be a positive outcome. You can say, I've really learned a lot, but I've got trust issues now. I've really learned a lot, and I don't hang with people anymore.
Yeah, so mine was a little different in the respect that it wasn't personal like that. It was more topical about the festival. So
yeah, exactly. But that was intentional.
Yeah, right.
You're the third person that I've shot. And so, I'm learning more and more.
So you got a variety of...
Yeah, pretty wide variety. Yeah. I've got a couple other people that I would like to beg to come in here. There are a couple of really powerful stories that can be told. But they're difficult to pursue.
I was just talking to a friend of mine a couple days ago, and I realized... I asked him, I said, well, he's sick and he's old, so he has a short time. And I asked him if he had any memoirs, if he was writing anything or what have you. And he's the kind of guy that should. You know, to me, I chat with him for a little while, and I realized, wow, he's been around. He's got a lot of experience. Got some stories of his own. I'm sure he was CIA or contract. Maybe he wasn't CIA, but he was
Right.
he was working in that business in the Vietnam War era. So he was a pilot.